You ever walk out to your favorite spot, expecting a quiet morning, only to find it's been turned into a nightmare? That's what happened to me when I strolled down to my fishing pond one crisp fall day, rod in hand, ready to lose myself in the rhythm of casting lines only to stop dead in my tracks. The water was streaked with unnatural blue, dead fish floating like ghosts, and a chemical stink so sharp it burned my nose. My name's Ethan Caldwell, a 42-year-old fishing guide who spent half his life studying lakes and rivers, learning their secrets, their delicate balance. This pond, tucked behind our sleepy little subdivision in Willow Creek, was my sanctuary for years 3, to be exact. Every dawn, I'd be there, watching the sun spill gold across the ripples, feeling like the world made sense for a few hours. Never had a problem with the HOA, either. I followed their rules, cleaned up after myself, even picked up trash left by kids sneaking beers by the shore. So, standing there, staring at this poison mess, my stomach churned not just from the smell, but from the gut-punch realization that someone did this on purpose. And the kicker? That same water fed every faucet in our neighborhood. I'm no stranger to water systems, me dad, a grizzled old angler, drilled it into me as a kid. A healthy lake is a living thing, and when the fish start dying, something's gone real wrong. This wasn't some natural die-off from a heat wave or algae bloom. The blue streak screamed copper sulfate, a heavy-duty chemical used to kill algae, the kind you don't just pick up at Home Depot. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, and they wanted it to look bad. But why? That question gnawed at me as I trudged back home, my boots sinking into the muddy shore, my mind racing. Then I saw a crisp white envelope taped to my front door, HOA letterhead glaring at me like a warning shot. A $150 fine for environmental damage caused by my fishing. My fishing. The same catch and release I'd done for years. The same routine that left the pond cleaner than I found it. The notice was signed by Patricia Hensley, our HOA president, a woman who carried herself like she owned the whole damn county. At 50, she had that polished realtor vibe-sharp blazer, sharper smile, the kind that promised you the world while picking your pocket. The fine didn't even make sense. Our HOA handbook, which I'd actually read when I moved in, required warnings, hearings, a whole process before they could slap you with a penalty. Patricia had skipped every step. And the date on the notice? Yesterday, before the fish started floating. That's when my blood ran cold. She knew this was coming. I was still gripping the paper, my jaw tight, when I heard her heels clicking down the sidewalk. Ethan, maybe if you weren't out there fishing all day, our pond wouldn't look like a toxic waste dump, she said, her voice dripping with fake concern, her leather binder tucked under her arm like a shield. I pointed at the water, the dead base glinting in the sun. You think my fishing did that? Patricia, I've been doing conservation work since you were selling condos. I don't even keep the fish. She just shrugged, her lips curling into that smug little smirk. All I know is we never had issues until you turned our pond into your personal playground. Besides, big changes are coming, improvements for property values. The way she lingered on improvements sent a shiver down my spine, like she was dangling a secret she knew I couldn't crack. That's when I started noticing things I'd missed before: fresh dirt piles near the shore, big pipes snaking underground toward the houses. Someone had been working here, and not for maintenance. I spent the next day digging through public records with my buddy Nate, a former HOA board member who'd quit after butting heads with Patricia. In the City Hall basement, he unrolled water system blueprints, his finger tracing a line from our pond straight to the treatment plant that fed every home in Willow Creek. If someone poisoned that water, he said, his voice low, they're poisoning their own kids' glasses too. I stared at those blue lines, my heart pounding. Could Patricia really be that reckless, or was this about something bigger? That night, I couldn't sleep. The pieces didn't add up. We frame me for something this extreme. So, around midnight, I slipped into the community center's basement where the HOA office sat. The lock was flimsy, giving way with a nudge from my credit card. Patricia's desk was a gold minute permits for a high-end condo complex, emails with Willow Development Group, and notes about contamination documentation for city approval. This wasn't about my fishing. She'd been planning to trash the pond for months to fast-track a real estate deal, probably pocketing a fat check to make it happen. I snapped photos, my hands shaking, and barely slipped out before the security guard's flashlight swept the hall. The next morning, things got uglier. A sheriff's deputy showed up with a lawsuit from Patricia claiming I'd been harassing her and trespassing on HOA property. $5,000 in damages, plus a restraining order to keep me from the pond. My neighbor started looking at me like I was the bad guy, Mrs. Larson, who used to wave when I passed with my tackle box, now hustled her grandkids inside when she saw me. The metallic tang in my tap water didn't help my paranoia. If the contamination was spreading, we were all drinking it. I called my friend Sarah, a water safety expert, who didn't sugarcoat it. Ethan, she's playing dirty, and lawsuits like this can bleed you dry. She's betting you'll fold. But folding wasn't an option, not when kids were getting sick, not when the truth was buried in those emails. Patricia called an emergency HOA meeting, breaking every bylaw with her 24-hour notice. The room buzzed with tension, neighbors whispering, eyeing me like I'd personally dumped poison in their yards. She stood at the podium, all pearls and power suit, holding up a pledge for me to sign, banning me from fishing forever. Buried in the fine print, clauses waiving my right to challenge future development. Sign it, Ethan, she said, her voice like ice, or this gets worse for you. I stood up, my voice steadier than I felt. Bylaws say you need an environmental study and a vote for this. You can't just rewrite the rules. Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. I'm the president, Mr. Caldwell. I decide what's best for our property values. Maybe you should find a new hobby or a new address. That's when she slipped up. In the chaos of neighbors arguing, she whispered to her assistant, loud enough for me to catch, "Get the contamination paperwork ready by Monday. The developers are pushing hard." My heart stopped. This was about money, plain and simply deal to fill in the pond for condos, with Patricia greasing the wheels. Nate caught it too, and by the next day, he dug up emails through his old board login. One from Willow Development, dated weeks before the fish kill, promised Patricia $75,000 to secure contamination evidence for permits. She wasn't just bending rules, she was orchestrating a crime. I knew we had to act fast. Sarah helped me organize a public water testing event, a community picnic with real-time results to cut through Patricia's lies. We set up tables by the pond, kids running around, families bringing coolers, but the air was thick with suspicion. Patricia showed up early, her own consultants in tow, setting up a rival testing station. "We're here for unbiased results," she announced, her voice carrying that fake sincerity she'd mastered. Her team even tried to stall Sarah with paperwork, flashing some nonsense about certifications, delaying us for an hour. I leaned over to Nate, who was filming everything. She's scared. She knows we're close. When the results came in, Sarah held up her tablet, her face grim. Copper sulfate levels are 20 times above safe limits, plus lead and mercury way too high for drinking water. The crowd gasped, parents clutching their kids. Mrs. Larson's voice cracked. "My grandson's been sick for weeks. We've been drinking this." Patricia's consultant jumped in, all corporate polish. These readings could be seasonal manageable with treatment. But Sarah wasn't having it. "This is industrial-grade poison, not nature. Someone with access did this on purpose." That's when Nate dropped the bomb, holding up the emails. Patricia took $75,000 to make this happen. It's all her deal with the developers. The crowd erupted, neighbors shouting, demanding answers. Patricia's face went white, her consultant slipping away to the parking lot. She tried one last deflection, pointing at me. He faked those emails. He's the one poisoning us. But no one bought it, not with Sarah's data. Not with the email headers verified by a lawyer neighbor who stepped up. This is fraud, Patricia. You betrayed us all. Then, in a moment I'll never forget, Patricia marched to the pond's fountain, muttering about proving the water was fine. She scooped up a handful and drank it, her face defiant. Within minutes, she was doubled over, vomiting, her body rejecting the very poison she'd unleashed. Paramedics rushed in, but the crowd just watched, stone-faced. Mrs. Larson crossed her arms. That's how my grandson felt, you monster. EPA agents rolled in before the ambulance left, their badges glinting as they took samples and statements. Agent Laura Carter laid out, deliberate contamination was a federal crime, with up to a decade in prison. Patricia was served notice for questioning, her career in ashes. The neighborhood rallied, signing petitions for her removal, filing lawsuits for medical bills and damages. Nate stepped up as interim HOA president, vowing transparency and real bylaws, no more backroom deals. Weeks later, I stood by the pond as cleanup crews worked, pulling toxins from the water that was starting to look alive again. Patricia pleaded guilty to fraud and environmental crimes, slapped with probation, a $75,000 fine, and a lifetime HOA ban. She lost everything: her license, her reputation, her house. Under Nate's lead, we protected the pond for good, with regular testing and new rules to keep it safe. Casting my line into the clear water, I felt the weight lift not just from me, but from all of us. Patricia thought she could poison our home for a quick buck, but the truth doesn't stay buried. It floats, sharp and undeniable, like a fish breaking the surface. What would you do if someone tried to pull this in your town? Drop a comment. Tell me your take. Did she get what she deserved? Or is there more to this kind of greed? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's keep fighting for what's right. Truth always wins, folks, but it needs us to pull it to the light.